Hello, and welcome to the Leadership Deep Dive show. I am here today with my friend and partner, David Lane Julie. Hey, David.
Hey, Margaret.
And I'm Margaret Katzkan, and we have a guest today, and I'm really looking forward to speaking with Cherian Koshy.
Hey.
Did I mess it up already?
No, you're great.
Okay, wow, that's great.
You have reached the first plateau, Margaret.
I win. I level up. Cherian is a best-selling author of the book Neuro Giving, the Science of Donor Decision Making, which is what caught my eye about you as a potential guest, and I'm looking forward to learning more about that. He is also a keynote speaker who helps nonprofits apply behavioral science and neuroscience to transform donor engagement and action. He is also a vice president at Kindsight and serves on the global board of AFP. Welcome, Cherian.
Thanks for having me. It's such a thrill. I appreciate it.
We're glad to have
we
you.
have a true globalist on the show today, Margaret.
Yeah. When we spoke earlier, I remember you kind of telling a story about how you worked in fundraising for a lot of years, and you got really sick of asking the question, why did this thing that I did work or not work? And it felt very random. And my recollection is that was part of what inspired you to kind of get a little bit more of a scientific grip on this. So.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of it was why did this work, but more of it was why didn't this work? And I think for a lot of us, there are times where we did this really good thing, this really good piece or whatever, and it fell flat. Like, why did that not work? But then there are times where we kind of didn't do something that was really great and it ended up working. And we're like, why did that play out that way? And that's what caused me this sort of angst. I'm like, I don't really understand. And I always thought it was sort of user error. And that's what got me to try and figure out, like, I don't understand. I don't get why these things are playing out this way. If I follow the playbook, it should work exactly the same way every single time. And it doesn't. And no matter what organization I went to, no matter who I listened to, that playbook didn't apply every single time. So that's what got me into behavioral science. And once I started understanding, and the book applies it to donor psychology, right? Like that's sort of the wheelhouse. But really, when you study behavioral psychology and behavioral science, you're talking about decision making in general. You're talking about, like, why do people not exercise? Why do people not save their money? Why do people not eat what they're supposed to eat? Why do people not do the things that they're supposed to do? Like, those are the decisions that we're talking about. And once you understand those decisions, once those behaviors, that clicked for me. That was the unlock. And then applying it to fundraising, I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. We can't do what we've done before and expect these kinds of results. That was really the unlock for me.
Yeah. So generosity is related, it sounds like, to the reasons we should maybe do something, or we know it is in our best interest to do something, but then we still don't actually press send.
Yeah, sort of. So the way that I would think about it is, like, a lot of times fundraisers think that we need to convince someone to be generous. Like, we can prove to you that this is a really good idea. And in reality, if you have been in that space at any point, what you know is that if somebody really just doesn't care about that thing, there's no amount of convincing that you can do to get them to care, right?
Right.
Like, there's no way of logicking your way into getting that person to care.
This is music to my ears.
Right?
As somebody who's, like, trained as a mathematician, physicist, and engineer, that you can't logic your way to. I mean, this is like Margaret and I love this stuff.
So I was actually on a, like, math podcast about this, and, like, on Bayesian, it was called some, I don't remember exactly, but like Bayesian math. There are priors, right? And, like, there are priors in human understanding, and either, like, your new information updates those priors or it doesn't. But for all of us, like if you don't care, like I have a dog. I don't really like cats. My daughter really wants to have a cat. There's no way that she's going to convince me to get a cat. Like, I don't want bad things to happen to cats. Like, but of all the things that I could give to, cat charities are not the top of my list. Like, they're just not. So there are lots of other things that I would give to before I would give to a cat charity. Again, I don't want bad things to happen to cats, but it's just not on the top of my list. So for everyone, they have that sort of set of priorities. And, and this is true in all of our, for all of our decisions, for all of our lives, everyone has that set of things that there's this prior understanding. And so Tamsin Webster does a great job of this. The way that I like to describe it is sort of like there's this pre-existing condition, that the substrate that you have to work on. And if you don't start from that pre-existing condition, nobody's going to buy into what you're talking about. They need to like grab onto something they already understand in order to sort of launch into what you're talking about. True for generosity, true for leadership, true for like dieting, doesn't matter. Whatever it is, like you got to have that substrate on which you are building off of.
So I'm having sort of this hit on a story that I'm going to just share, but then I would love for you to like help apply that. Like, I feel like I'm halfway there to understanding. So I remember listening once to, it was a coaching demo, which we, got lots of the master coaches who are teaching us to become coaches, demonstrate with people. And the person that he was coaching, her thing was that she was really unhappy with her body and she wanted to lose weight. And the coach sort of did a little aside to us, like, I could ask her if she's eating carbs, or I could ask her how often, but like, I promise you that's not going to change anything.
Yes.
And so he started asking her all these questions about like what mattered to her. And suddenly she's talking about how when her kid goes running off down the street, she can't keep up with him. And that, like she wants to be able to play with her kids and keep up with her kids. And suddenly she's crying like, and now we all know she's touched into something. So I think this is what you're talking about.
That's exactly right. And so like the shift that I talk about in the book that's really relevant to like generosity and fundraisers is really around identity. But the identity piece comes down to like what other behavioral scientists, like real scientists, talk about is belief. So the author that I would point people to is my friend Owen Fitzpatrick. He's coming out with a book later this year, which will undoubtedly be like a New York Times bestseller, like a whole different level. The example that he uses, which is very much along the lines of this, is he was talking to someone on stage who wanted to quit smoking. And she said, I'm a smoker. Like, I don't know how to quit smoking. And he said, how much do you smoke? And she said, like 2 packs a day. I can't stop smoking. I'm a smoker. And he asked her, well, how long does it take you in general to smoke 2 packs a day? And she said, well, like all in maybe 2 hours. And he said, well, that means in a 24-hour day, 22 hours of the day, you are not a smoker. You're a non-smoker. 2 hours of the day, you're a smoker. Now, there's more to that story that we're not going to go into today. But the shift in understanding is she thought of herself as a smoker, and just that change in belief is, no, I'm a non-smoker who spends 2 hours a day smoking. That shift in identity framing and belief understanding changed, and for what it's worth, today she's not a smoker. And how you change your orientation and look at that perceptually then can shift how your beliefs transform into your actions. That's the key. And so when you understand the identity of the person, the belief structure of the person, that transforms what the next steps are, what the actions they will take are, or how those actions will manifest themselves in the world.
So I've heard it said, and I believe this is true, and I may have even read this at one point early in my fundraising journey when I was a frontline fundraiser, that giving money away is a completely irrational act.
Totally.
Right. So And yet people do it. So just back to the logical and rational for a moment, right? So what we're talking about is an activity that is completely irrational and illogical. Just for all you out there in the audience, who give away money and think you do it. I mean, you may rationalize it through logic and reason, but that's not how you get to giving or being generous. So I'd be interested in your thoughts on that, and how fundraisers in the audience and even salespeople in the audience, because these things are similarly aligned. I think the neuroscience and the behavioral science on buying behavior is also similar, that people make buying decisions emotionally and they rationalize them logically. So what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so let's start with the first part. The first part is, I mean, objectively, there's no rational reason for people to give money away, right? Like there just isn't. There's some, as I mentioned, there's some like identity reason that's driving people, and then some emotional component that's pushing people in that direction. Mm-hmm. So, we could go into the, brain chemicals around bonding hormones and all of that. We don't need to do that. But to say, like, if somebody did something nice for me, or if I have some familial relationship, or some of these categories of identity and emotion, that's going to drive me to do something quote unquote irrational, right? Something that says, I want to pay something back, pay something forward, do something that aligns with this thing that I care about. So I'm going to give some money to this entity to do something that I want to see happen in the world, right? And the higher my level of trust, the less I'm concerned about whether that thing really comes to fruition, right? So if I have high levels of trust in that organization, then it really doesn't matter if they do the thing, as much as it just gets it off my psyche. Like if I'm just paying it forward, I don't really need to know that they completely did the thing. I just need to feel good that I did the thing, if that makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's just my obligation to do that. And so, for example, a lot of religious giving has that implication. Like I don't need to see the output. I just need to do it because that's sort of my quote unquote obligation. When it comes to the similarities of buying behavior and giving behavior, the similarity is that it's still irrational. The buying behavior, a lot of people want to say that there's some sort of rational utilitarian calculus. I would say to a certain extent, if you need a thing, right? Like if you absolutely need something, you need a 5/8 wrench in order to fix something, well then yeah, absolutely, you're going to buy that thing. But ultimately, most of our buying decisions come down to some emotional component. And then a lot of what we're doing is based upon some kind of nudge, some kind of heuristic that's pushing us in some kind of direction. So the reason why we're Apple or Android has a lot to do with how we're irrationally pushed in one direction or another, or why we buy something monthly versus one time. There's tons of science around all of those things. So all of these pieces come down to what are these biases that we have in our brain around what decisions seem right to us at the time, and how is our brain conserving energy and making these essentially snap judgments.
Right. And we're not thinking about that. All that's happening in the background. So I want to bring it over to leadership for a moment, because you said something that caught my attention. You used the word trust earlier. And I do think in the realm of philanthropy and giving, that trusting the organization, trusting the leadership of the organization, trusting the fundraiser, that comes into play. So I want to set that aside for a moment and talk about trust within the organization, trust in the leadership. I'm curious. Margaret and I have found that trust is such an important quality or factor in an effective leadership. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, what your book says about it, what the neuroscience says about it. Yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, so I mean, objectively true, right? I would say it's arguably one of the most, if not the most important aspect of what leadership looks like today. And what I mean by that is, in the past, in command and control structures of leadership, you would be able to just say, like, this is what needs to be done, and you go do this thing, and then managers and staff would sort of fall into line and accomplish those tasks. In today's environment, the studies actually indicate, so Francesca Gino did a study a few years ago that demonstrates that leaders who create trusting environments create staff that are actually more productive. And the reason is because the safety that they create in that environment allows staff members to be able to do their best work, because they come to their leaders with questions or concerns, and they know that they have the ability to share what's going right and going wrong, and they know that they have an environment that their leader is open to those types of issues. Where I would sort of kind of modify and grow that is where I would think generosity, not in the terms of like, giving money, but the generosity spirit of sharing information and sharing accolades or sharing opportunity.
Actually, it goes deeper than that. The science is pretty well established now, and you touched on this in your book, but it's sharing your vulnerability that really builds trust. Not, all those other things are nice to have and certainly important, but on leadership teams, or if you're a leader leading a team, if you are wearing, as Brene Brown says, a 30-ton shield called invulnerability, then nobody's going to trust you. But if you reveal, and this is kind of very difficult, Margaret and I are both certified in the DISC behavioral profile, and you're shaking your head, so I know you're familiar. So again, it's not psychological, it's not personality, it's behaviorally based.
Yeah.
So if your style is more closed, which a couple of the styles are, the D's and the C's are more closed, harder to build trust with them. Not impossible, and you have to be aware of your own closing off of others as a natural behavioral style, and be willing to be more open. Anyway, this is, I think this is true also for frontline fundraisers in terms of what they're willing to reveal about themselves, even though they may be taught never to reveal anything personal about yourself. This is actually the worst piece of advice I've ever heard.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And what's worth about the organization as well. So,
and the organization.
Coming back to like the olden days of like command and control structures, that was true when like expertise was held by the leader and you were the smartest person in the room. And then you would say like, this is the right answer. In today's world, the possibility of the answer exists in the collaboration, right? It's lots of people who might know some part of the answer, and working together comes up with a solution, which is why trust is the critical component. And that can also exist with your stakeholders, whether they're customers or donors or community members or whoever. So vulnerability on the part of the organization is actually also the critical component. So it's really important that you are transparent with, we as an organization may not have all the right answers. We are not completely right all the time. We got it wrong in this instance.
I've worked with clients multiple times to do a version of the mea culpa, not just, but really to share like, wow, we made a big mistake and here's what we learned. And it is an unbelievable cringe for most people to make some form of that communication. And yet they almost inevitably get incredible feedback from people that, thank you. And they just try to explain to them, like, your donors are humans. Like, they don't believe that everything's going perfectly anyway.
That's right.
So they
And
would rate,
in fact,
and they
they are
built
skeptical if
businesses.
everything's going perfect all the time.
Right. Then
They're
it's like,
more
oh,
distrusting if that's the case.
right. You just look like an Instagram profile.
Yep.
Nobody believes you. Yeah. So I do think that's very true. The mea culpa email.
I mean, I would say every single time I've worked with an organization that has, not manufactured, but has truly said, this is what's going wrong. This is what we're worried about. This is what we forecast as an issue. Please come share with us what you think we should do. Or we've made a mistake. Here's what we want to lay bare for you as an issue. Every single time it has worked out better for them because it engenders future trust. It engenders buy-in. But anytime an organization has sort of tried to sweep that under the rug or not, not be transparent about it, it has eliminated that trust. And it doesn't, first of all, it doesn't let donors have an opportunity to jump in and say, here's where we can support you, right? And that's true in any type of organization, any type of leadership scenario. So, but, there's very clear science, there's very clear theory on all of those elements. So what I would come back to is the point that when we're talking about trust, the trust is created in repeated instances, small instances of a buildup over time. It's not this one big demonstration of trust, nor is it perfect trust that's like artificial. So that's where I think a lot of people get the trust formula wrong.
I'm curious about what's coming up for me right now is this disconnect between boards. I know you're on the board of AFP Global, and thank you for doing that service. I served here in our local chapter for many years in Southwest Florida, but certainly in the small to mid-sized nonprofit realm, where Margaret and I do a lot of our work in leadership development and coaching, there seems to be a disconnect between the psychology. I'll bring that in. The psychology, since your work is around psychology and behavioral science. So the psychology and behavior of board members and the psychology and behavior of frontline staffers, both in the program deployment and as well as fundraising. And I'm curious about what your thoughts are on this, because this disconnect is just everywhere.
Yeah, it truly is. I think the challenge, obviously depending on the circumstances, there's a lot of great board members and there are a lot of well-meaning board members who get it wrong, right? And I think the challenge is when board members honestly don't apply their own personal their personal experience with trust and relationships in the nonprofit setting, right? And what I mean by that is every sort of personal relationship teaches you how trust and relationships form. Every single one of us have friendships that have been built over these repeated small development of trust, where vulnerability exists and where we show up repeatedly, and then we sort of expect that we can close a gift in one meeting with a person, and we can sort of pitch it to them in this like logic-based version of some weird reality of that doesn't exist, right? Like it's sort of they take off this hat of what works in their real life and then transpose that into the nonprofit world, and they're like, well, that would work over here. And like, no, if you were going to ask someone to help you move your couch, who would you call? You wouldn't go pitch that to you're
Oprah. You wouldn't
Yeah.
pitch moving your couch to Oprah.
Right.
Or
like,
somebody you'd been on one date with. Either,
exactly.
right.
Or,
Yeah.
it's like some random neighbor who looks strong.
Unless you don't want to go on another date, Margaret.
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly. Like the obvious logic, right, would be, if I need to move a couch, I'm going to call my best friend and I'm going to say, hey, you know me really well. Will you come help me move my couch? And they will say yes, right? Like they don't need to ask any more questions, right? That's the kind of like obvious logic. But when it comes to fundraising, the board members like, who is the richest person we know, and how do we convince that person to care about the performing arts when every other giving that they've done is in like pediatric oncology? Like, what?
So let me ask you this question. Like, I've seen this, and Margaret's seen it many more times than I have, but you're exactly spot on, right? When the boards that I've served on and the boards that I've advised, and Margaret, it continues to do this work with boards, in terms of advising executive directors and advising board members, is to do it. I'm sure you're still recommending this, Margaret, but correct me if I'm wrong, is to basically, you go first to the people that know and trust you to ask them to support what you're working on. Now, why is it though that, there's some psychological, like, what is it about the money thing that has people triggered and unwilling to approach their friends and family to support the cause that they are supporting?
Sure. I think simply there's an element of like fear of rejection, right? Like those closest to you, you worry about, like, I don't want them to say no, and then I have to face them again. And so when I've worked with boards, and certainly my own boards that I've been on, as a fundraiser or a fellow board member, the thing that I remind them of is those are the people who care about the thing that you care about. Right. So if you love kids and, care about kids getting, whatever education or care or whatever, you probably hang out with people who care about that same thing. You want to give them an opportunity to invest in that same thing. And if they say no, no harm, no foul. Right. But the likelihood is you hang out with the same type of people. And so, giving them that opportunity is really important. But I think the real worry is, first and foremost, is the rejection. The second is the reciprocity. I don't want them to ask me to support the things that they're doing that I might not care about, right? The things that I might not be interested in, or that I might not want to be involved with, because all of us get inundated with asks, right?
Well, like, if I give to your thing, then I get to ask you to give to my thing.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So those are the two primary things. I think there's probably other things, but those are the two primary things that I think people are worried about.
So I'd love to just get a little granular for a minute. It's been a great high level conversation. In the neuroscience of generosity, coming back to sort of fundraising, but also leadership, trying to be compelling and be a visionary and bring people along with you. But I'm hearing you say, communications, whether we're across the table or we're sending out things from the nonprofit space, we are going for alignment first. We're going for people's hearts. We're not, the logic is secondary. The statistics are secondary.
Absolutely.
So that's thing one that I'm hearing. I'm hearing as thing two, this is all about building trust. So we know that often means telling stories about something that's gone well or that's gone less well, but that we've really learned and evolved from. What might be a third kind of best practice for fundraisers based on what you understand about generosity in our brains?
Honestly, I think the thing to remember is that a lot of times people are showing up with a handful of cash. What I mean by that is they're either showing up on your website or they're showing up to events, not literally, but they're ready to give. If they're landing on your website or they're coming to your event, they have some interest or some inclination. And we want to make it as easy as possible for them to do the thing that they want to do. And many times organizations make it exorbitantly difficult for people to do that thing. Like, why? Why do we need to know your dog's favorite color and t-shirt size in order for people to make that gift? Look, they're sitting there holding a bag full of cash, figuratively, ready to make a gift. And all we have to do is take the money.
So once people are at your event or on your website or reaching out to be curious, believe them that they're already interested.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Let them do the thing that they want to do and make it as easy as humanly possible for them to do that thing. And let me be clear, they're not always ready to give you $1 million, but they're ready to do something. And so in the book, in the science, we talk about foot in door technique, right? Like there's something that they might want to do. There's something that they might want to engage with. Maybe they want to come to another event. Maybe they want to volunteer. Maybe they want to, whatever. Allow them to do the thing that makes them feel the most comfortable in that moment. If they show up to something, whether it's your website or to your event or to whatever, let them do that and make it very, very easy for them to do that.
Mm.
Great.
I think that might be. I think you just pointed us in the direction where we might give the audience, unless there's something else to discuss. I mean, that's brilliant. Like, I'm hearing like, make it easy for them to help you. Help them to help you.
Yeah, I mean. The thing that I keep coming back to, like in all of my talks and all of my workshops, is that most people consider themselves to be generous people. And if that's true, like if you walk down the street and you ask someone, do you think of yourself as a generous person? Almost everyone says yes, which means that as long as there's some sort of alignment, which because they raised their hand and they showed up on your website, they showed up at your event, they did something, then there's something that they want to do. So let them do that thing. Make it easier for them to do that thing, and you'll be in good shape. Like that's the secret. That's it.
I think that's a good
way all the time.
I think that's a good suggestion for leadership too. Like if you're managing a team and people are showing up to work, there's something about, other than collecting a paycheck, because they can go elsewhere and collect a paycheck. There's something about, why they're there and why they're with you. And there's got to be something that they want to do. And maybe your job as a leader is not to tell them what to do, but just to ask them, what do you want to do?
I mean, how many leaders are just like micromanaging the crap out of people and telling them like, this is what to do? Like, kind of get out of like you hired them for a reason. Get out of their way. Let them do their best work.
I'll circle back to maybe giving the audience something to try here, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts. I was on the phone earlier today with a headhunter in the nonprofit space. He's looking to fill roles, and I asked him, are there still a lot of, for all the years 10 years in fundraising, 10 years since fundraising, but coaching fundraising leaders, 20 years of experience, and there's still more jobs and more people changing jobs in the fundraising space of nonprofits. There's got to be some behavioral or neuropsychology stuff going on there, because it just doesn't seem to change at all. Do you have any thoughts for the audience on this turnover in nonprofit fundraising?
I mean, that's a whole nother podcast.
That could be a whole book for you, Cherian.
That's a different concept altogether. The way that I would simplify that is to say that most organizations operate under a single loop thesis, which by that I mean like either someone quits or a job search fails, and they're like, let's rejigger the job description or let's hire someone else, and it's just like fix this problem and redo the same thing. Most organizations don't look at that problem and operate under a double loop thesis, which is what caused that problem in the first place. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we might need to figure
Mm-hmm.
out what caused that person to quit, what's wrong with this job entirely, and how do we reconstruct this from the
Mm-hmm.
entire structural perspective. Are the
Mm-hmm.
expectations wrong? Are the metrics wrong? Like, all of these things. And I would suggest that in most organizations, that's the problem. That's the issue. This position is not managed correctly. It's not, like, the oversight's wrong, the accountability's wrong, the expectation, like, all of that is the problem.
Wow. Okay. Well, there's another book for you. I'm going to challenge you, Cherian, to go and do the research on that, because I think that could be your New York Times bestseller. Your next New York Times bestseller. But if you had to give the audience something to try, I want to circle back to that. What would you basically? We've had a wide-ranging conversation, so
Yeah.
something practical that they can put into practice.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think anybody can walk away from, this book, any book, this conversation, and feel like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that I could do. There's so many places where I can jump into this game of double dutch. What I would say is the practical thing to walk away from these types of conversations, like any of your podcast episodes, is what's the one thing that I can walk away from and say, I'm going to try this one piece. So in this, like, where's one place, whether it's on my website or in a job description or in my leadership style, that I can unpack how is this training people to act? How is this shaping the practice? How is this impacting my team, my donors? What is this creating? What is this incentivizing? And essentially running that audit and determining, is this actually what I want people to think, do, and act? And if that's really, if you run that audit, my guess is you're going to find there's one piece of that you can change today. One little piece of that you can change today. And that's all I would ask people to do, is just take one minor repair. Don't try and, like, I hate this term, but boil the ocean, right? Try and fix everything at once. Just try and fix one little thing and see where that takes you.
The little thing, just to make sure I understand, a place where you maybe aren't having the impact that you would like to be having.
Yeah, exactly. Unintentionally, right? I think in every one of our lives, there's something where I'm like, you know what? I probably shouldn't have had, the silly example is maybe I should have the sweet potato fries instead of the regular fries, right? Like, I'm still going to have the cheeseburger, but I can, like, add a side salad, right? Just make it a little bit better and then move from there.
And I also heard you say, specifically for the fundraising leaders in our audience, that really look at your process of how people interact with you, and just make it easier for them to give.
Yeah.
Like, even if you do one small thing, just make it easier for them to give. They want to give. This is your science seems to be pointing to the generosity of people. So just make it easy for them.
Exactly. And there's myriad of ways that you can do that. Just, one thing that you can do today to make it easier to give makes somebody's job a little bit easier. That's great.
And Margaret, are we going to put contact information and where people can find Cherian?
We will put links to Cherian's website and to where to buy his book for anyone.
All right.
The name of the book again is Neurogiving: The Science of Donor Decision Making. We'll point people to buy that if they are curious and want to take a deeper dive. Thank you so much, Cherian. We've loved talking to you. It's been a really bright and interesting conversation. So thank you for being our guest.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks.
All right. We'll see you.